going from 80-1 to 28-1. The Buccaneers upset over the Eagles improved their odds over 57%, tying them with the Packers at plus 2,800. And C.J. Stroud became the youngest quarterback to win a playoff game as his Texans beat the Browns by 31 points. However, their odds only improved 25%, giving them the longest odds to win the Super Bowl. Rachel, C.J. Stroud fan club president you are, do you see any value on one of these long shots to win the big game?
I would love to have taken the Texans, but there's the long shot there is just, it's too long. I think on the Detroit Lions, though. I think it's going to be a tight game between them and the Buccaneers this weekend. When you look at it, plus 900, those are 9-1 odds. Like, I think it is more likely than not that the Detroit Lions are a Super Bowl champion than the 9-1 odds that they're currently given. So I do think there's value on that. Having said that, I don't think the Lions are going to win the Super Bowl. And so it's kind of one of those things where you're taking the value, potentially you get some cash out value when they beat the Buccaneers this weekend. But at the end of the day, that's really the only line that's got some value that I think is worth laying some money on.
Okay. Nick, is there a dark horse worth wagering on in your eyes after that movement?
Yeah, I mean, I'm leaning no bet, but I agree with Rachel's logic. I think of the four, the Lions are the best team here by a pretty wide margin. They rank number six in my expected points-based power rankings. I have them at about an 8% chance to win the Super Bowl overall, which equates to about plus 1150. And so at plus 900, it's a negative ROI. But, I do buy the logic of staking that position if you plan to immediately flip it and cash it out when they win this weekend. For example, the Lions should beat the Bucs 75% of the time. So if you think that the cash out next week offered to you at plus 900 will be better than plus 650, then you should take the Lions. But that's kind of convoluted nerd math for nerds like Rachel and I. So my general recommendation here would be no bet.
Hey, I'm offended. I didn't get included in the nerd group. Come on, Nick. I think I
And,
did a
and
couple
you as
criteria
well.
there.
My fault, Olivia.
Okay.
You as well.
Okay. So this next segment is called Fade the Public. We've talked all season about how the public has been winning, but this past weekend, public hit just 4 of 9 bets on wildcard weekend. So let's take a look at a couple possible spots to fade them this weekend for divisional round. We're all excited for this one. It's the Chiefs and Bills squaring off on Sunday night in a highly anticipated rematch. That was week 14 when the Bills won 20-17 on the final drive. Patrick Mahomes will play his first career road playoff game, but the public's not too worried about a tough environment impacting the Chiefs and Mahomes. 62% of early bets are on the over. The splits have swung more towards the under as the week has progressed, by the way. Nick, are you fading or siding with the public here?
Yeah, this is a fade. I actually like the under quite a bit in this game. I think if this game was played in Buffalo in October, this would be a pretty clear over at the number. The chance of weather here is worth at least 2 or 3 points, even if we're not considering the fact that the KC defense has been vastly improved, or that the fact that the Bills offense isn't as explosive as it was, given an injured Gabe Davis and increasingly ineffective James Cook. Beyond that, I think I've said a few times on the show, the number one predictor for totals going over is turnovers. And both of these teams have really cleaned up their takeaways over the past month, with turnovers between them down 40% since week 11. I see this as a lower scoring game than most people think. And so I like the fade of the public and taking the under.
Rachel, how do you see this one playing out?
I'm, for every single reason Nick just laid out, I am right with him here on the under. I'm going to wait on the weather just because that's something that very clearly matters when you're playing in Buffalo. And I mean, I'm in a city that's not too far from Buffalo, and it's a polar vortex right now. And so I think when you look at it, you kind of have to wait a little bit, but I like the under here for all the reasons that Nick laid out, especially the fact that they have cleaned up the turnovers and the offenses aren't as explosive. The other thing to keep in mind is, yes, we have great quarterbacks in Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, but Patrick Mahomes is playing on the road. He's not going to have that quiet crowd when he's on offense, and I think that is likely going to impact how he's going to be able to move the ball downfield. Then you consider the fact that we've got cold air, and the science behind that is that the ball just flat out doesn't fly the same way. I think we've got some chances for some even missed field goals in this type of game. And so I look at this, and I'm on the under here, especially when you consider the weather that could be at play.
Right. This will be his 16th playoff start, the first one on the road, not including Super Bowls. But I think you're right. I think that'll be significant. Let's take a look at another game that the public is loving, but switch to the NFC. This is a game I'll be on the sideline for, so I'm really excited to dig into it. The Buccaneers and Lions. It's another rematch from the regular season where the Lions won 20-6. That was week 6. The public is expecting more points this time around with 68% of the early bets and more than 75% of the money, both on the over. Rachel, are you fading the public on this total?
I'm going to side with the public on this total. I'm not sure that I'm going to bet it, but I'm definitely leaning towards that direction. If you look at the offense here with Baker Mayfield, he's included Chris Godwin more, Mike Evans. If he doesn't have those 2 drops, he's got over 100 yards in the last game. Then you've got Trey Palmer, Moore. There's so many weapons here. We haven't even talked about Cade Otton and Rashad White. And so I think they've really come together as an offense, the Buccaneers have. And so that 6 number, that's not going to cut it. And I think Detroit, when you look at it, Montgomery, Gibbs, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jared Goff is playing really well. And neither defense has really shown me that they're capable of stopping a hot offense. And so when I look at that, I've got this modeled out 50.2. And so that's like a 1.5 of value. I like that. I just don't know if I'm going to take it. And I'll probably have to wait until closer to the game to decide that.
Nick, what do you think? Over or under 48.5?
Yeah, I mean, this is actually a no bet for me. I think this line is actually pretty efficient. I have one deviation range of outcomes on the total from 44 to 52 here, which isn't really particularly compelling range against a number of 48. I would agree with Rachel and lean slightly towards the over, only on the basis of I think my sense is that the world hasn't really caught up to how efficient the Tampa offense is. They rank 10th in the league for the year and third over the past month. I think there's going to be lots of surface here for this game to be a track meet, but because of some of the diversity of outcomes on the model, I'd probably stay away myself.
Okay, let's look at some trends that may benefit a few teams heading into the divisional round. It's a huge talking point for everyone, especially as the Bills game got moved last weekend. So let's look into this. The 49ers will have a major rest advantage over the Packers this weekend, of course, if they had the first round bye. They've covered the spread in both of their games with a rest advantage this season. Chiefs are 2-0 against the spread with the rest advantage this season. They'll have 2 extra days of rest over the Bills. I think that's significant. Detroit will have 1 extra day of rest over Tampa Bay, and they fared well with the rest advantage this season as well, covering the spread in 4 of 5. Nick, which one of these rested teams are going to cover the spread this weekend?
Yeah, I don't like any one of these bets individually, but I think, there's some room to be creative. I like a 4-point teaser with San Francisco and Detroit in this scenario. These are teams that have the biggest offensive efficiency advantage in their matchup. And so I want to get exposure to that difference without necessarily paying full price. I'm not typically a huge fan of teasers, but a 4-pointer here allows us to play into that advantage while moving San Francisco below a touchdown and moving Detroit below a field goal, which are 2 pretty critical thresholds that take backdoor covers off the table. I want to get access to San Francisco and Detroit here, not full price, but I think a teaser is a smart way to do that.
Rachel, what do you think? How do you see this trend playing out?
I like Nick's teaser a lot, and I was kind of looking at a teaser too, but then I took into account that the Kansas City Chiefs are going to have an extra 2 days of rest, and Buffalo is technically going to be on a short week because of how their schedule played out with that lovely weather that they had. And so I'm on the Kansas City Chiefs here. I think when you look at it, yes, 2.5 is a small number. I think this likely comes down to a final gameplay similar to when they played last. And when I look at this, Patrick Mahomes is just really difficult to bet against in the playoffs. He always seems to find a way to get it done. And yes, the Buffalo defense has been better of late, and both teams have cleaned up their turnovers. But I think that rest, especially in the cold weather, the hits are harder, they hurt more, and it takes the body a little bit longer to recover in conditions like that. I think the Chiefs, even though they played in a cold game as well, that extra 48 hours to be able to recuperate, recover, I think that's going to play a huge role here, and it likely could lead to a Chiefs win against the Bills here.
Yeah, they do seem almost more conservative when they're at Arrowhead. So the Chiefs will be great on the road. I'm looking forward to that. Let's discuss another trend, this time involving MVP favorite Lamar Jackson and his Ravens. Covering the spread has been a tough one for the Ravens when they're big favorites. Baltimore is 1-3 against the spread as a favorite of at least 7.5 points this season, with their only cover coming back in week 1 against, guess who? The Houston Texans. That was CJ Stroud's first ever NFL game. Going back over the last 3 seasons, the trend only worsens, going to 1-8. Another trend working against the Ravens is the Texans covering as away underdogs 4 out of 5 times this season. Rachel, do any of these trends worry you, or are you laying the points with the Ravens?
I, as the president of the Canadian chapter of the CJ Stroud fan club,
Yes.
to nobody's surprise, I'm going to lean on the Texans to cover. I'm waiting for Mark Andrews, who was a full participant in practice, and that is a major part of the Baltimore Ravens offense. He would be a key cog there, but I do like the Texans to cover. Look at what they did to Cleveland last week. That was one of the best defenses in the NFL this year, and yes, the Baltimore defense has been really good of late, and they've been able to stop some pretty high-powered offenses, but I think when you look at it, CJ Stroud, he's not playing like a rookie. He's playing more like a veteran. I've got this modeled out closer to 7, and so when I look at this, 9.5 is a ton. There's backdoor cover options. You just need a late field goal, even a late touchdown in garbage time. And I think when you look at this, the Texans are coming in. They've got that backs against the wall. We've got nothing really to lose. And when Baltimore hasn't played, they've really struggled to cover the spread. And so I look at this and I think this is going to be a much closer game than a lot of books expect it to be.
Nick, who do you see covering the 9.5?
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably leaning no bet. I mean, I do think this line is too high. I do see where it's coming from, though. Baltimore is clearly the best team in the AFC. Texans are on the road in the cold grass in Baltimore, going up against the best quarterback in the league with his best weapon back in action. So I understand the logic. Defensively, the teams that profile most similarly to the Ravens in terms of scheme and success rate are the Jets, who beat the Texans by 24 points pretty recently. I think with that said, the number being as high as it is entertains lots of outs, whether it's backdoors, turnovers, special teams mishaps, whatever. I think the variance here at that number makes me kind of lean away from it and towards a no bet, for all the reasons that Rachel laid out as well.
All right. It's time to find some leverage in the market. That's right. Alt line leverage is here. We're going to share our favorite alternate lines for any bet this weekend. So, Nick, where are you finding leverage with an alternate line this week?
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned, Fade the Public, I really like the under in the KC Buffalo game. Both teams have cleaned up a lot of their mistakes. I want to find an alt line there, and I'd actually take it all the way down to 39.5. I want to avoid the very common totals 40, 41, 42, 44, which are 4 of the most 6 frequent totals in NFL history. If possible, I'd even like to middle it and hedge it a little bit with the Bills turnover prop. By my models, if Buffalo turns the ball over twice or more, not only does the Bills' win likelihood drop to 26%, but the average total in that game leaps up to 48. It gives me this really great two-sided hedge in a pretty plausible middle as well.
Rachel, what's an alternate line that you've got?
I have to go with the San Francisco 49ers here and their running back, Christian McCaffrey. The Green Bay Packers have not really been able to stop the run of late, and we're talking about the best running back in the National Football League this season and probably the last couple of seasons, if we're being honest. It's a high-powered offense, and when you look at Kyle Shanahan versus Matt LaFleur, Kyle Shanahan's offense has taken Matt LaFleur's defense to the woodshed when they've played. So I look at this, and I think not only is San Francisco likely going to win this game and be leading this game for the majority of it, there's an opportunity here for Christian McCaffrey to have some pretty explosive runs, and I would not be surprised if he goes over his longest rush total or any of numbers of that nature. And so I look at this, 100 plus is easily doable for McCaffrey. He's done it quite a few times this season, and so I look at this at plus 130. I really like this bet here.
Haven't you heard the Packers defense is back? I'm a hopeful Packer fan here. We're back, baby. Okay, let's check out some more spots for value with the mispriced market exchange. We're going to tell you which lines we believe are mispriced, resulting in good value. Rachel, where do you see a misprice in the market?
We're going to follow another trend here. I think the CJ Stroud passing touchdown market is mispriced here. When you look at it, he was able to throw for 3 touchdowns against the Cleveland Browns. He had 2 the week before that. And when you look at CJ Stroud and the offensive weapons that he has, yes, he doesn't have Tank Dell, but his chemistry with Nico Collins has been great. Dalton Schultz has been a really good weapon for him of late, and he started to throw out to his running backs as well. And so when you look at this, I think CJ Stroud at plus money, specifically plus 165 over 1.5 passing touchdowns, to me, anything that's above plus 120 is sort of a misprice here. So if I'm getting 45 points of value, that's a price I'm going to take, especially because I do see this game going over. I think if that's going to happen, probably have to count on the fact that CJ Stroud is going to be throwing the ball and probably throwing some touchdowns.
Okay, Nick, which bet is mispriced in your eyes?
Yeah, I like the Lions at plus 325 to win the NFC. As I said at the top of the show, the Lions are a strong favorite this week. They should beat the Bucs about 75% of the time. So plus 325 here implies that the Lions only have a 30% chance of beating either the 49ers or Packers next week. I do think for obvious reasons that game will be in and against San Francisco. But even, sorry for, breaking your heart when I say that, Olivia, but even against a team as good as the 49ers, I think barring any injury weirdness, I think the probability of that's closer to 35 to 40%. So at plus 325, that gives us a slight angle and value on the Lions with a great hedge opportunity by taking 49ers money lines next week.
Okay, you've broken my heart, but we must forge on with the show. Before we wrap up the episode, we're going to give you our blue chip bets, aka our best bets. Anything we love, it can be spread, money line, total, props, whatever you want. Nick, what is your blue chip bet this week?
Yeah, I know Rachel and I both like this one. I like Travis Kelce over 61.5 receiving yards. It's pretty clear that Patrick Mahomes doesn't and shouldn't trust anyone other than Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce, as 2 of them commanded 64% of the targets last week against the Dolphins. Meanwhile, the Bills are a mash unit at linebacker. Matt Milano's out. Tyrell Dodson, Balen Spector, Terrell Bernard, all missing practice. They've been touched up by Gerald Everett for 7 catches, Jake Ferguson for 6, Mike Gesicki for 4 over the past month, which just gives us a lots of data points that point to an over for Kelce. I do like this line all the way to 63, maybe even 64. And there's actually some really interesting, juicy single game parlay action if you want to go that way. This correlates really well with Isaac Pacheco rushing unders and Bill's first half money lines. I think there's a lot of surface to attack Travis Kelce here.
Okay, Rachel, I know he said you like that one too. Is that your blue chip bet?
I do like that one. I'm going to go a little bit of a different direction here just so that we have multiple blue chip bets, but I'm absolutely with Nick on that one. I like it all the way up to 64 as well. I'm going to take the 49ers minus 9.5 and in turn break Olivia's heart as well. So that makes you and me the same person, Nick. We're both terrible people. But I look at this and I say the San Francisco 49ers, they got rest. They're healthy. When you look at the diversity of weapons that they have on offense and the fact that on defense, I do think that even with Jordan Love's improved play, they are going to be able to stop the Packers offense to a degree that the Dallas Cowboys were not. And so when I look at this, do I think there's opportunities for backdoor covers? Yes, but I also think this is a situation where the San Francisco 49ers are so clearly the better team with a diversity of offense, excellent defense, and they're playing at home with rest. I don't think this should be a close game at all. And so I'm going to back the San Francisco 49ers at 9.5 here.
Okay, so I might be sad on next week's show. Nick is already sad because the Steelers lost last weekend. And Rachel, I think you might be sad next weekend as well after the CJ Stroud fan club has stopped their meetings until next season. But thanks, guys, for all of your insight. A lot of fun this week. Thanks for you at home watching Inside the Lines. We'll be back every Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern. We'll see you next week.